Hi, this is Johnny Bergen with another Chicago Blues guitar lesson. This time we're going down to Memphis and back to Chicago, talking about Junior Parker, billed on these records as Little Junior's Blue Flames on the Sun Records, with Pat Hare on guitar, who went on to be a major player in Chicago. I've brought up Pat Hare before because we were talking about playing in a different position, playing in D. And his stuff is great in D with Pretty Baby, Riding in the Moonlight. And I hope you'll check that lesson out. I can't really overstate how influential his stuff is because people kept coming back to it 10 years later, 20 years later, with classic remakes of these songs by James Cotton. There's a really great one with James Cotton live at the Penelope Club, 1967, Late Night Blues it's called. And on the Verve stuff, he does I Feel So Good or Feeling Good, same thing. And the Magic Sound did I Feel So Good on West Side Soul and some other recordings as well. And then Junior Wells did Mystery Train, and it just goes on and on. They just keep going back to this wellspring of inspiration. So the road to Chicago blues definitely goes through Memphis. So let's look at these sort of elemental songs. I'm going to start with Love My Baby. And I really think that it's quite possible that this thing, maybe that was how it got into Hideaway, where it goes. I think it came from there. I really do. We'll never truly know that. But let's talk about this. I like to use these two fingers and sort of balance it better that way. I'm on the 12th of the E string, 12th of the G string. This sounds way better with your fingers. And then you're back to try a 2-finger E chord. This is just pretty easy this way. You can see, I talked about this in the John Lee Hooker I'm in the Mood lesson. But here's a 2-finger E chord. I'm bumping in to the A string. And it's just easy. So what I did was this. And see the tug? It's another tug, just like this. When you did this. Notice it's the same note. I like the way he snaps into that. It's really handy and useful to have this 2-finger E chord for this little figure that you do out of an E6 kind of a thing. And here's your 5. Notice I'm not even bothering with the high E string because this just doesn't sound right. You don't want it to sound like Folsom Prison Blues, okay? So I just leave it out. And there's that sliding into the 5th fret of the B string with the open E string, which is just so, you get that in Guitar Slim, you get it everywhere. It's funny, I just listened to the Roland Janes version with Hayden Thompson, the Hayden Thompson record of Mystery Train, and it's like instead of sliding up, he slid down. It's like he took the exact same guitar licks and just kind of did the opposite of it. So that sort of tells us something right there. So that's how that song goes. I'm going to go through the form of this song. So it starts on the 4, and this is just like Mystery Train. These songs are like brothers. That's why I'm teaching them the same lesson. You could sing Mystery Train or Love My Baby over this. Be in the same place. No turnaround, which is so cool. Here's the solo. It just feels so complete. So Mystery Train has the same form, like I was saying, and it's a little bit different. It has that beat like on the way, doom bum 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 doom bum. So that's like automatically different, and it's kind of funky. Two-finger E chord. Train I ride, 16 coaches long. My baby. Same thing with your finger flipping over to the low E string. Sorry. Now here's a solo. This is great because you go behind the E chord here. Like this is like your A chord that's been moved all the way up 9th and 12th fret, and you're going to go behind it. I like to use my first two fingers like this. Or you could use your your third and first. Like. The sound of the fingers on the string there, just look at the difference. That's okay, but this is way better. Now, which was funkier, right? So, notice a little tug there. And then you could go up with your finger or down with your thumb, but I think it's up. Same thing over the fork. And notice this little tug here. This is making me feel good. Or I did that as my little touch. So that's pretty easy. You can play anything there with that phrasing and it's going to be good. So that's the kind of stuff he would play in E. And now we're going to go to A. And let's start with Feel So Good. And this, you've heard Magic Sam do it. You've heard the Luther Tucker version. So if you're going to use a pick, the Luther Tucker version on that James Cotton record, or they did it a couple times. There's live versions and there's a studio version. That's the way to go. So I'm going to briefly digress and show you this is what I would do with a pick. And this is really neat because the drums are on the Junior Parker records, are very kind of static. They play the same pattern all the way through. It never really, there's very little fills or anything. And the guitar is always changing around. He's always adapting, picking things up during like a kind of a solo or during a moment of more excitement. But Luther Tucker pretty much stays the same all the way through, and the drums are going crazy. So it's like a flip-flop arrangement. Take a look at my right hand. Sometimes you hear this, but usually you hear this. That doesn't sound right. Let's try this again. So it's a very hard attack and a very strong mute. You could try it with this, or you could try it open. Kind of like that. So I'm starting to, and he grew up in Memphis, I think, and I'm starting to think if you're from Memphis, then like, you got to have a boogie or you just can't play. I mean, in some places, okay, you had to play Frosty or you weren't a real guitar player. So anyway, that was kind of the Luther Tucker version. It's very tight and it's very kind of... It's almost exaggerated to a comical effect, but it works, I'm just kind of deadening, making sure I deaden with my first finger here. So this is kind of another snap in, the same way you had the snap in Love My Baby, you got this. This is a neat song because it has a real static drum part. And then it has its bass parts. So a bop, 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 bop. And then you have a whole different rhythm on the guitar. So the real trick is sort of gently lifting up your palm up and down. We talked about this a bit in the John Lee Hooker lesson I did. You should be able to do this for a long time without tiring yourself out. Now the real $1 million question is the roll of your first finger. It's not this that totally. Sometimes it's just your thumb going up and down. So he's got his thumb going up and down, he's got the muting, and sometimes he works his first finger in. There's a perfect little thing to talk over and sing over, like Junior Parker does. You know, it's just, well, you know, I was walking down the street. I mean, he's just telling you something. And then it's cool the way Mighty Joe Young does this part in the Magic Sam version, but just doesn't sound right with a pick. Look at it. Just doesn't sound right. And then, of course, you just have "Feel So Good." Just the D7th with the F sharp. If you're going to look at the Magic Sam version, sometimes you go. And then the real question is, when does he use his finger, right? This is what I do. Can't say this with Magic Sam. This really works. And it gives you a break. If you could just hold your thumb strong and sort of support it. This kind of gives you a break. So everybody took their best stab at it, but Pat Hare really had these magical rhythms. It was like R.L. Burnside, but even more hypnotic. Now we're just going to talk about my favorite song of all time, I think, which is "Feeling Bad." And I love these answer songs. So many blues hits have answer songs. So now I'm in open G with a capo on the 2nd fret. So now if you play an A7th, you just go. That's basically, you know, most of it. But I mean, you know, where the rubber hits the road is where it's kind of tough. So to get started on this song, I first just started trying to hunt down the bass line, and I came up with this. It's a real tic-tac bass line. So it's really sharp and staccato, so maybe that's where Luther Tucker got that tic-tic-tic thing all the time, right? You know? So this is a song that doesn't have a 5. It has a 4, though. And the 4 is just like a C chord, okay? And that puts in this case, it's a C in the bass. So it's the dominant seventh in the bass of a T chord, right? So you got that going the whole way through, and then you got to use your finger to go. So the main thing is this is kind of the granddaddy of looking good. I mean, it's got to be. The only thing is, looking good is in standard tuning. So the trick is to break it down into parts and go slower when you're trying to learn something, right? Sometimes you can get that. So good luck with that one. It is tough. And when he doubles it up like that. And then, you know, it feels so bad. It almost sounds like he's playing backwards because there's some buzzing or something. It's so trippy. And it's just so, like, technically challenging, really. To me, it is anyway. I just want to show you how great Pat Hare is. Really, I think of him almost as like a Robert Lockwood. The same way Robert Lockwood started with the Robert Johnson style. And then went on to play all this amazing jazzy stuff. But real deep blues, because everything he did came out blues. That's kind of what happened to Pat Hare. If you look at his playing that he did in prison, and there are some links to that in the description of this video. He really started one place and ended up in a completely different place musically. This stuff is more like John Lee Hooker, and it's more like kind of R.L. Burnside stuff. And it's got a real chunk to it. So it's just so cool, the journey there. So have fun looking at these songs in A, in open G or capoed at the A, and in E. It's kind of the beginning of all this stuff. It's the beginning of rockabilly, the beginning of rock and roll, the beginning of electric blues, and it went straight to Chicago, and it's reverberating. It reverberated for a long time, and it made a huge impact. So I hope you enjoy looking at these songs in E and A. Thanks a lot, and do subscribe to my YouTube channel.